I knew something was wrong the second I saw my apartment door cracked open at 1:17 in the morning. Not wide open, not kicked in, just open enough for a blade of yellow hallway light to cut across the floorboards. I stood there with my suitcase in one hand, a garment bag over my shoulder, and 3 days of airport coffee still burning a hole through my stomach. I had just gotten back from a work trip to Denver, the kind where everyone says, safe travels, and then schedules you for a 7 a.m. call anyway. I'm Caleb Harris, 32 years old. I design lighting systems for boutique hotels, which sounds more glamorous than it is. Mostly it means I spend my life in conference rooms arguing about dimmers with men who use the phrase brand atmosphere like it pays rent. I was exhausted enough to hallucinate, but not exhausted enough to ignore an open door. I set my suitcase down carefully. Then Tessa Morgan appeared in the doorway like she'd been waiting for me in the shadows. Barefoot, hair twisted into a messy knot, wearing my gray Northwestern hoodie, the one I'd been pretending not to notice had migrated permanently into her laundry basket. She pressed one finger to her lips. Then she leaned close enough that I caught the smell of mint toothpaste and the vanilla lotion she used before bed. "You won't be sleeping tonight," she whispered. Now there are sentences a man expects to hear from his roommate at 1 in the morning. "Your package came. The sink is leaking. I accidentally ate your leftovers." That was not one of them. I looked over her shoulder into the apartment. "Is someone here?" Her eyes flicked toward the living room. "Yes." My hand tightened on the suitcase handle. "Do I need to call somebody?" "No." She grabbed my wrist before I could reach for my phone. Her fingers were warm, and for one ridiculous second my body focused on that, instead of the fact that my apartment had apparently become a midnight hostage situation. Then she added, "Unless there's a hotline for emotional blackmail by relatives." I stared at her. She winced. "My parents are here." That should have made things better. It did not. Tessa and I had been roommates for 11 months, which was long enough for me to know 3 things about her family. 1. Her mother believed every unmarried woman over 28 was personally insulting her. 2. Her father thought silence fixed everything, including conversations, plumbing, and childhood trauma. 3. Tessa became a different person after phone calls with them. Smaller, somehow. Sharper around the edges. Like she had to fold herself into a version they found easier to criticize. I'd met Tessa when my old roommate got engaged and moved out with 4 days' notice, and a smug little speech about life seasons. She was a graphic designer, 30 years old, allergic to fake plants, and the only person who showed up to the apartment viewing with a tape measure, a credit report, and a bag of bagels. Because, as she put it, major housing decisions should involve carbs. I liked her immediately, which was inconvenient, because liking your roommate immediately is how you end up washing dishes at midnight, while pretending you don't notice the way she hums old Motown songs under her breath, or how she sticks pencils into her hair and forgets them there, or how her laugh sometimes arrives before she can stop it. So I made rules: no flirting, no imagining, no standing too close in the kitchen. I broke the third rule constantly. "Tessa," I whispered, "why are your parents in our apartment?" She closed her eyes. "Because my mother called from downstairs at 9 and said they were in town for my cousin's engagement brunch tomorrow." "Your cousin who sells teeth whitening strips on Instagram?" "Professionally, yes." "And they didn't get a hotel?" "She said hotels are too expensive." I glanced toward the living room where I could now make out the shape of 2 people asleep on our pull-out couch under the quilt. Tessa kept folded over the armchair. I lowered my voice. "Your parents own a lake house?" She said hotels are emotionally expensive. "Ah," Tessa rubbed her forehead. "It gets worse." Of course it did. With Tessa, worse usually arrived wearing lipstick and carrying a casserole. She stepped into the hallway and pulled the door until it was nearly closed behind her. Now we were both standing in the narrow corridor outside our apartment, me in a wrinkled dress shirt, her in my hoodie, our knees almost touching, because the neighbor across the hall kept a decorative bench nobody had ever asked for. The elevator dinged somewhere below us. Tessa looked up at me, and there it was again. That pull I hated and wanted. Her face bare of makeup, tired and nervous, but still Tessa. Still the woman who once redesigned my entire client presentation at 2 in the morning, because she said my slides looked like a hostage note made by a beige accountant. Still the woman who saved me the corner brownie because she knew I pretended not to care about dessert. "What did you do?" I asked. She swallowed. "I told them you were my boyfriend." I blinked. Once, twice. Somewhere in my exhausted brain, a tiny man in a hard hat dropped a wrench. "You told your parents," I said slowly, "that I'm your boyfriend." Technically, I implied at first. That distinction feels important only to lawyers and people going to hell. I panicked. "You panicked into a relationship?" Her mouth twitched despite herself. "You're very calm for a man who just got promoted." Tessa, she looked away, and just like that the humor drained out. "My mom started in before she even took off her coat," she whispered. "Still living with a man who isn't interested in you?" Still making logos for breweries instead of doing something stable? Still pretending you don't want a family? I felt my jaw tighten. She said that? Tessa nodded, eyes fixed on the ugly hallway carpet. Then she said my cousin's brunch would be a great place to reconnect with Brandon. I knew that name. Brandon was the ex who once told Tessa she was too intense to marry but fun to date, which told me everything I needed to know about Brandon, and also made me hope he stepped barefoot on a charging cable every morning for the rest of his life. So I said I wasn't available, she continued. She asked if I was seeing someone. I said yes. She asked who. Her eyes came back to mine. I said you. For a second I forgot to be tired. The hallway seemed to shrink around us. The hum of the vending machine near the stairwell got louder. Tessa's hand was still wrapped around my wrist, though I don't think she realized it. I did. I realized it very much. Why me? I asked softer than I meant to. Her answer came too fast. Because you live here. I raised an eyebrow. And because, she added quieter, you're the only man I know who has never made me feel like I had to apologize for taking up space. That landed somewhere deep. I wasn't ready for it. Neither was she, judging by how quickly she looked down and let go of my wrist. I'm sorry, she said. I know this is insane. You can be mad, you can laugh, you can move to Portugal. I deserve all of it. I'm not moving to Portugal. Good. Your passport photo looks criminal. I almost smiled. Almost. Then the apartment door opened behind her. Tessa froze, a tall man with silver hair, pajama pants, and the expression of someone who had never apologized to a toaster stood in the doorway, her father. He looked at me, then at Tessa, then at my suitcase. You're home, he said. Yes, sir, I replied automatically, because apparently my spine had been raised by Midwestern grandparents. He nodded toward the apartment. Your room was too drafty for Linda's back, so we put your things in Tessa's room. Tessa's face went completely still. My heart did one hard, stupid kick against my ribs. Her father stepped aside like this was the most normal thing in the world. You two should get some rest, he said. Big day tomorrow. Then he looked directly at me. And Caleb? Yes. His eyes narrowed just slightly. At breakfast, I'd like to hear how serious you are about my daughter. There are moments in a man's life when he should say something decisive. This was one of those moments. Unfortunately, the only thing my brain produced was breakfast. Tessa's father nodded once. 8. Then he disappeared into the apartment, shutting the door behind him with the quiet finality of a prison gate. Tessa and I stayed in the hallway. My room, she whispered. Yes. With my bed, I assumed. And my laundry chair. I'm familiar with the so-we-a chair. She covered her face with both hands. Caleb, I am so sorry. I should have been worried about logistics, boundaries, the fact that I had been awake for 20 hours, and apparently now had to audition for the role of suitable partner in front of two people who had colonized my living room. Instead, all I could think was Tessa's room. I had been in there before, of course, to fix a shelf, to help carry in the desk she bought on Facebook Marketplace, from a man who definitely lived in a basement. But I had never been in there at night, with her standing beside me in bare feet, looking at me like I had the power to make this either humiliating or bearable. So I said, we need rules. Her hands dropped. Yes, good, rules. I love rules. Rules are sexy. I looked at her. She blinked. Not sexy, practical. I'm sleep deprived. Rule 1, I said. I sleep on the floor. Absolutely not. Tessa, you got off a plane. You have conference room back. You are not sleeping on hardwood so my mother can preserve her fantasy of my romantic stability. You want the floor? No, I want to magically grow a guest room. That's not a rule. It's an aspiration. I sighed and picked up my suitcase. We'll figure it out inside. The apartment was dim except for the stove light. Her parents were shapes beneath blankets on the pull-out couch. Her mother made a soft snoring noise that somehow sounded judgmental. Tessa led me down the hall. Her bedroom door was half open. My duffel sat by her dresser. My folded clothes were stacked on the pale green armchair in the corner. My shaving kit rested politely beside her perfume bottles, which felt more intimate than it had any right to. Her room smelled like lavender, paper, and Tessa. She closed the door behind us and leaned back against it, eyes squeezed shut. I may fake my own death before brunch. Messy, lots of paperwork. You design hotel lighting. You can forge a death certificate. That is not what I do. You're being very unhelpful for my boyfriend. The word hit the air between us, boyfriend. She opened one eye as if checking whether I'd flinched. I hadn't. That seemed to surprise both of us. I set my suitcase down. Temporary boyfriend, obviously. Limited engagement. Very limited. Terms to be discussed. Are you going to invoice me? I accept payment in corner brownies. Her mouth curved small and tired and real. Then she crossed the room and pulled a folded quilt from the foot of the bed. I'll make you a nest. A nest, a dignified nest. Tessa, I'm not letting you, Caleb. She turned, clutching the quilt. Please don't do the noble thing. That stopped me. Her voice had changed, gone thin at the edges. I know you're trying to be kind, she said, but if you sleep on the floor, I will lie awake all night feeling like I turned you into a martyr, because I couldn't stand up to my mother. I stared at her. She looked embarrassed by the honesty, but she didn't take it back. So, I said the truth. Or part of it. I'm not kind because I pity you. Her fingers tightened in the quilt. I don't think you're weak, I said. I don't think you're a mess. I don't think you need rescuing from your life. Her eyes shone and I hated her parents a little more for making those words necessary. I continued, my voice rougher now, you're one of the most capable people I've ever met. Also terrifying with a label maker. A laugh slipped out of her, watery and surprised. I stepped closer, but not too close. If I help tomorrow, it's not because I feel trapped. It's because you asked me. I didn't ask very well. No, you committed light fraud and dragged me into domestic theater. That is fair, but I'm choosing to stay in it. The room went quiet. Tessa looked at me like she didn't know what to do with being chosen. Then she lifted the quilt between us. Then choose the left side of the bed because I sleep on the right. My chest did something inconvenient. The bed, I repeated. Yes. Her chin lifted. We are adults. We can share a mattress without bursting into flames. Historically, adults are very bad at that. Are you saying you lack discipline, Harris? I should not have liked the challenge in her eyes. I liked it very much. I'm saying, I replied then, that if you steal blankets, our fake relationship may not survive the night. She walked to the bed and yanked back the covers. I do not steal blankets. I redistribute warmth. Communist. Humanitarian. I changed in the bathroom, brushed my teeth with airport toothpaste, and came back wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. Trying not to notice how Tessa's gaze briefly dropped to my chest before snapping to the wall. She had changed too. Soft blue sleep shorts and an oversized white t-shirt with a faded sun on it. It was deeply unfair. She climbed into bed first and turned off the lamp, leaving only the city glow through the blinds. I lay down carefully on the left side, as close to the edge as physics allowed. For 30 seconds, neither of us moved. Then Tessa whispered, "This is weird." "Yes, are you uncomfortable? Physically or spiritually?" she snorted. "Both. Physically, I'm fine. Spiritually, I may need a priest." Her shoulders shook with silent laughter. It loosened something in me. In the dark, she shifted onto her side, facing me. I did the same before I could talk myself out of it. We were close enough that I could see the outline of her nose, the curve of her mouth, the shine of her eyes. "Caleb? Yeah? Why aren't you dating anyone?" I laughed under my breath. That's a very dangerous question for my fake girlfriend. I'm serious, so was she. I looked up at the ceiling because the person I want lives with me. The silence after that was enormous. I closed my eyes. There it was, out, unplanned, irretrievable. "Caleb," she breathed. "I know, terrible timing. We can pretend I said Portugal." She didn't laugh. The mattress dipped as she moved closer. Her hand found mine under the covers, tentative at first, then certain. "I don't want to pretend you said Portugal," she whispered. I turned my head. She was right there, not touching except for our hands, but suddenly the whole room felt built around that small contact. "I thought I was imagining it," she said. "What? You looking at me like that?" My thumb brushed once over her knuckles. "You weren't." Her breath caught. For one reckless second, I thought she would kiss me. For one even more reckless second, I thought I would let her. Then, from the living room, her mother called, "Tessa, are you too decent?" Tessa squeezed her eyes shut. I whispered, "Define decent." She bit her lip hard to keep from laughing, and somehow that was almost worse than a kiss. "Sweeter, more dangerous." Her mother called again. "I forgot to mention Brandon will be at brunch." Tessa's hand went stiff in mine. I held on, not as a rescuer, as a man who had just told the truth and wanted her to know he meant it. Tessa looked at me in the dark. Then very softly she squeezed back. Neither of us slept much. That was not as romantic as it sounds. Mostly, it involved lying perfectly still beside Tessa while my body conducted a full internal board meeting about her knee accidentally touching my thigh. At some point around 3, she whispered, "Are you awake?" "No." "Liar." "Yes." She rolled onto her back. "Do you regret saying it?" I knew what she meant. The person I want lives with me. I had spent the last 2 hours wondering if there was a dignified way to swallow a sentence whole, but in the dark, with her hands still loosely caught in mine under the blanket, I couldn't lie. "No," I said. "I regret saying it while your mother was within shouting distance." Tessa made a soft sound, not quite a laugh. "I don't regret hearing it," she whispered. That sentence kept me warm until dawn. At 7:12, I woke to Tessa's alarm vibrating somewhere under her pillow and her face pressed against my shoulder. Her hair was everywhere. One hand rested on my chest, fingers curled into my t-shirt like she'd been holding on in her sleep. I did not move, I barely breathed, then her eyes opened. For one suspended second, she looked at me without remembering the world. Soft, sleepy, unarmored. Then memory crashed in. "Oh my God." She jerked back so fast she nearly fell off the mattress. I caught her wrist. "Careful." Her eyes dropped to my hand, then rose to my face. That same current passed between us again. Less surprising, now, more dangerous because we both knew it was there. "You drooled on me," I said. Her mouth fell open. I did not. Emotionally, at least. She grabbed a pillow and hit me with it. I laughed, and for a moment it was just us. No parents, no brunch, no ex-boyfriend with a dental plan smile. Just Tessa on her knees in bed, hair wild, trying not to smile while threatening me with bedding. Then a knock landed on the door. Tessa, her mother called. Breakfast in 10, wear something flattering. Tessa's smile vanished. I watched her shoulders tense, watched the old armor slide into place. I hated it. But I also remembered what I had told her last night. Not rescue, choice. So I sat up and said, I have an idea. If it involves faking food poisoning, I'm listening. Breakfast date. She blinked. What? You and me, before we go out there, 5 minutes. Coffee by the window. We set the terms of this boyfriend situation. Her expression changed slowly, like sunlight moving across a wall. A date? She asked. A planning meeting with romantic undertones. That sounds like something you'd put in a corporate calendar. I'll add a location. She glanced at the closed door, then back at me. Okay. 5 minutes later, we stood in the kitchen in our socks while her parents occupied the bathroom, and our apartment felt like a stage set before the actors came out. I made coffee. Tessa cut 2 pieces of banana bread she'd baked before my trip and apparently hidden from me for morale emergencies. We sat on the floor by the living room window because it was the only place not visible from the hallway. The city was pale and damp outside. Her knee touched mine. It felt absurdly intimate. So, she said, wrapping both hands around her mug. Terms? Public hand-holding? I asked. She pretended to consider. Acceptable. Arm around shoulders, situational. Kissing? Her eyes snapped to mine. I had meant it as a practical question, mostly. Maybe 10% practical, the air between us thinned. Tessa looked down into her coffee. I don't want our first kiss to be for them. Our first kiss. The words hit me harder than any yes could have. I set my mug down. Good. She looked up. Good? If I kiss you, it won't be to convince your mother. Her cheeks went pink. And, I added, because apparently I had decided honesty was my new destructive hobby, I'd like to kiss you when you're thinking about me, not Brandon Brunch or surviving Linda Morgan. Tessa's gaze lowered to my mouth. I forgot every language I knew. I'm thinking about you now, she said quietly. The bathroom door opened down the hall. We both froze. Her father's footsteps moved toward the guest towels. Tessa exhaled, half laugh, half agony. Your timing is terrible. My timing? I wasn't the one who invited a parental invasion. She shoved my shoulder lightly. Her hand lingered a second too long. Then she leaned in close enough that her breath touched my cheek and whispered, Hold that thought, boyfriend. I nearly spilled coffee on myself. Breakfast was an interrogation disguised as eggs. Linda Morgan wore pearl earrings and a cardigan the color of judgment. Her husband Peter read the news on his phone like the rest of us were weather. So Caleb, Linda said, slicing toast with surgical precision, how long has this been going on? Tessa's foot found mine under the table. I didn't know if it was panic or warning. I covered her hand on the tabletop. Longer than either of us admitted, I said. Tessa went still beside me. Linda's eyebrows rose. Meaning? I looked at Tessa, not her mother. Meaning I noticed when you stopped singing in the kitchen. Meaning I kept buying that cinnamon tea you like, even though I hate cinnamon. Meaning I have spent 11 months convincing myself the best thing I could do was not want you. But I only said, meaning Tessa became important to me before I was smart enough to say it. Her fingers slipped between mine. Not fake, not for the table. Hers. Linda blinked, temporarily disarmed. Peter looked up from his phone. And your intentions? Tessa opened her mouth, probably to deflect. I squeezed her hand once asking. She looked at me. Then she answered before I could. Dad, my intentions matter too. The room went silent. Color rose in her cheeks, but she kept going. I know you're asking, Caleb, because that's what you do. You decide whether a man is serious enough to make me legitimate somehow. But I'm not a rental application. If this is real, she paused and her hand tightened around mine. If we make it real, it will be because I choose it too. I stared at her. Pride spread through me so fast it almost hurt. Linda set down her fork. Tessa, don't be dramatic. Tessa smiled, but it shook. I learned from the best. I coughed into my coffee. Wrong move. Linda's eyes landed on me. You find this funny? No, ma'am. I cleared my throat. I find your daughter impressive. Tessa looked at me then, and the whole noisy, uncomfortable morning shrank into one small, private thing. By the time we reached the engagement brunch, we had survived 2 lectures about parking, one comment about Tessa's dress being busy, and Peter asking whether my career had growth potential. Tessa wore a green wrap dress with tiny white flowers. It tied at the waist and made me forget several safety procedures. You're staring, she murmured as we walked toward the restaurant. Yes, no denial. I've grown as a person. She bit back a smile. How do I look? I stopped walking. She turned surprised. You look like the woman I had no business falling for across a pile of unpaid utility bills. Her expression softened so quickly it stole my breath. Caleb? I stepped closer. People moved around us on the sidewalk, but I barely noticed. I know today is pretend, I said, but that part isn't. Her eyes shone. Then she reached up and adjusted my collar, though it didn't need adjusting. I'm scared, she admitted. Of Brandon? No. Her fingers rested at my throat. Of wanting this and finding out it only works because we're performing. I covered her hand with mine. Then let's stop performing for 1 minute. She looked up. I bent slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Tessa met me halfway. The kiss was soft, brief, a promise more than a claim. But when her hand slid to the back of my neck and held me there for one extra heartbeat, nothing about it felt fake. We parted inches apart. She smiled, dazed. Okay, okay? Okay, boyfriend. Her thumb brushed my jaw. Now we can go ruin brunch. I laughed and took her hand. Inside the restaurant, her cousin waved from a long table covered in flowers and champagne flutes. And at the far end, a blond man in a navy blazer stood when he saw Tessa. Brandon smiled like he'd been expecting her. Tessa's hand tightened around about mine. I lifted it and kissed her knuckles. Not for him. For her. Still with me? I asked. She looked at our joined hands, then at me. More than before, she said. Brandon had the kind of face that looked expensive to maintain. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, perfect casual lean against the champagne table, as if gravity had signed an agreement to flatter him. Tessa, he said, opening his arms like a man expecting applause. Wow, you look incredible. Tessa's hand stayed in mine. Hi, Brandon. His gaze flicked to me, then to our linked fingers. And you brought Caleb, she said. I held out my free hand. The boyfriend. Tessa made a sound beside me that might have been a cough, except her shoulder was shaking. Brandon's smile tightened as we shook hands. Right. Linda mentioned something. Did she? Tessa asked too brightly. She said it was new. I looked at Tessa. 11 months is new if you're measuring in geological time. That got me a real laugh from her, quick and surprised, and I decided immediately I would spend the rest of my life trying to earn that sound. Dangerous thought. I filed it away under things to panic about later. The brunch was loud, floral, and aggressively mimosa-based. Tessa's cousin floated around showing off a ring that could probably interfere with aircraft navigation. Linda kept introducing me to relatives as Tessa's friend Caleb, until Tessa corrected her for the third time with boyfriend, mom, and squeezed my knee under the table like she was choosing the word on purpose. Each time it hit me somewhere low and warm. Halfway through, Brandon slid into the empty chair beside Tessa while I was reaching for the coffee. So, Caleb, he said, graphic design still? God, Tessa's smile went polite. Yes, God cute. I always thought you'd get bored of that. I set the coffee down. Tessa didn't need me to answer for her. She proved it by leaning back and saying, I did get bored of dating men who called my career cute, so that worked out. Guy choked on nothing. Brandon laughed like she had made a charming joke instead of a clean incision. Guy'd still sharp, still observant. His eyes moved over her. I missed that. There it was, the old claim, the assumption that history gave him access. Tessa's knee pressed against mine beneath the table. This time it wasn't panic, it was contact. A small steady, I'm here. I turned my hand palm up on my thigh. She slid her fingers into mine without looking. Brandon saw. His jaw flexed. Caleb, he said, how did you two meet? Apartment listing, I said. He smirked. Convenient? Very, I got rent control and the love of my life. Tessa's head snapped toward me. I hadn't planned that. The words had come out too easily, dressed like a joke, but carrying more truth than either of us had agreed to handle in public. Her eyes searched mine. I didn't look away. The room blurred around the edges. Champagne laughter, clinking forks, Linda's voice across the table. None of it mattered as much as Tessa staring at me like she had heard the part I hadn't meant to say aloud. God, Brandon cleared his throat. Big words for a new thing. God, Tessa looked back at him. It doesn't feel new, she said. My lungs stopped working. Then she lifted our joined hands onto the table. Not hidden, not performative, simply there. Brandon's smile finally cracked. Aunt someone or other called for a toast, saving us from whatever he might have said next. Everyone stood. Glasses rose. The engaged couple kissed to applause. Tessa leaned toward me, close enough that her shoulder had tucked under my arm. You okay? I murmured. Better than okay. Her voice was soft. You? I may have called you the love of my life in front of a man with veneers. You did. Too much? She looked up at me through her lashes. Ask me when I can kiss you properly. That sentence nearly ended me in a brunch restaurant. After the toast, I needed air. Or sanity. Possibly both. Tessa must have noticed because she tugged my hand and nodded toward a side hallway. We slipped past a wall of framed wine certificates and found a tiny back patio with 2 metal chairs, 3 potted herbs, and a view of the alley. It was perfect. Tessa exhaled and leaned against the brick wall. I hate brunch. I'm developing concerns about parsley centerpieces. She smiled, but it faded. I stepped closer. Hey, I'm sorry, for what? For all of this. My parents, Brandon. Making you say things you may not have wanted to say. You didn't make me. Caleb, I know what I said. I moved closer until there was only a careful inch between us. And I know what part was a joke. Her breath caught. Which part? Rent control. She laughed once, startled, but her eyes filled. I touched her cheek with the back of my fingers. Tessa, I am wildly, inconveniently in love with you. The alley went silent. Even the city seemed to pause. Her lips parted. You are? Yeah, how long? Do you want the honest answer, or the answer that makes me sound less pathetic? Honest. The bagels at the apartment viewing started it. The night you fell asleep on the couch during that thunderstorm and grabbed my sleeve so I wouldn't leave finished it. She stared at me like I had handed her something breakable. I wasn't asleep. she whispered. My hand stilled. I knew you stayed, she said. I knew you sat on the floor because I was scared and pretended it was no big deal. I think that was when I started wanting you. Wanting? The word burned straight through me. I lowered my forehead to hers. We are extremely bad at being roommates. The worst, she whispered. Do you want this? Outside of today? Outside of them? Her hand slid up my chest, careful and certain. Yes, one word. No performance in it. I kissed her then, not soft like the sidewalk, not brief. This was the kiss we'd been circling for 11 months and one impossible night. Her fingers curling into my shirt, my hand at her waist, the little sound she made when I tilted my head and she opened for me. I forgot the brunch, the fake story, the rules, my own name. There was only Tessa, warm against the brick, kissing me like she had finally stopped apologizing for wanting something. When we broke apart, she was flushed and smiling. That, she said, was not for my mother. No. Or Brandon. Absolutely not. That was for me. I brushed my thumb over her lower lip. And me. She nodded, then laughed softly. Good. Because I would like to do it again later. Somewhere with fewer trash cans. Romantic standards, I respect them. We stayed outside another minute, her tucked against me, my arms around her. It felt less like hiding and more like choosing a door before walking through it. When we returned, Linda spotted us immediately. Her eyes narrowed at Tessa's swollen mouth. Then Brandon stood. I was just telling your parents, he said, voice smooth, that you and I should catch up sometime, privately. Tessa slipped her hand into mine. No, she said, one simple syllable. Linda stiffened. Tessa, don't be rude. I'm not being rude, I'm being clear. Brandon's smile vanished. Seriously? After everything? Tessa's chin lifted, but I felt her hand tremble. I squeezed once. She squeezed back, then stepped half a pace forward, not behind me. Yes, she said. After everything. Peter finally looked up. Linda looked embarrassed. Brandon looked like someone had denied him valet parking. And Tessa? Tessa looked terrified. But she also looked free. Then Linda's voice dropped, sharp enough to cut glass. If you walk out now, don't expect us to clean up the consequences. Tessa went very still. I looked at her waiting, not pulling, not deciding. Her eyes met mine. Will you come with me? She asked. I smiled because that was the easiest question I'd ever been given. Anywhere. She took a breath. Then Tessa Postmorn turned from the table, still holding my hand, and walked out into the afternoon with me. We made it 3 blocks before Tessa stopped walking. Not because she changed her mind, because she started shaking. 1 second she was marching down the sidewalk in that green dress like a woman escaping a burning building. The next, she was standing beside a parking meter with one hand over her mouth, breathing too fast. I stopped with her. Hey, I said softly, look at me. She did, and the brave set of her face crumpled. I just walked out on my mother. You did. At a family brunch, yes, with quiche. A bold setting. A laugh broke out of her, thin and wild. Then tears followed. I opened my arms, but I didn't pull her in. She came to me. That mattered. Tessa pressed her face against my chest, and I held her on a sunny sidewalk while people stepped around us with polite city indifference. Her fingers gripped the back of my shirt. I feel awful, she whispered. I know, and relieved. That too, and hungry. I barely touched my eggs. I kissed the top of her head. Now that is a crisis I'm qualified to handle. She leaned back, wiping under her eyes. Are you taking me somewhere romantic? I was thinking tacos, her smile wobbled. You understand me on a spiritual level. We found a tiny place 2 neighborhoods over with plastic chairs, orange walls, and a woman behind the counter who called everyone honey. We sat in the back booth, overdressed and underslept, sharing chips and salsa like it was a 5-course meal. No parents, no Brandon, no audience. Just Tessa across from me, mascara smudged, bare knee brushing mine under the table. So, she said, dipping a chip, we should probably discuss the roommate situation. My stomach tightened. Yeah, because if this goes badly, one of us has to move out. And I refuse to live with anyone who alphabetizes soup. That system saves lives, it saves no one. I tried to smile, but she saw through it. Tessa reached across the table and took my hand. I'm scared too, she said. I looked at our hands, then at her. I don't want to lose what we had, I admitted. The ordinary stuff, coffee, grocery lists, you yelling at design shows because the kerning is bad. The kerning is often bad. I know. Her thumb moved over my knuckles. I don't want to lose that either, but last night when you said you wanted me, I realized something. What? I've been calling it safe because I was afraid to call it love. The noise of the restaurant faded. She swallowed. And I do love you. In the ordinary stuff, in the ridiculous stuff, in the way you buy the good paper towels and pretend you don't care that I steal your hoodies. You do steal my hoodies. I'm confessing, love. Don't interrupt. Yes, ma'am. Her eyes shone, but this time she smiled through it. I love you, Caleb Harris. Not because you played boyfriend well, because you made it impossible for me to keep pretending I didn't want the real thing. I had imagined hearing those words from her. Never in a taco shop with salsa on my cuff. Somehow it was perfect. I stood, came around to her side of the booth, and slid in beside her. She laughed as I cupped her face. This is a very public taco establishment, she whispered. Then I'll be brief. I was not brief. She kissed me back with both hands in my hair, smiling against my mouth, while someone at the counter wolf whistled and the woman who called everyone honey yelled, "Let them live." So we did. When we got home that evening, her parents were gone. The pull-out couch was folded away. The quilt was draped over the armchair with military precision. On the kitchen counter sat Linda's spare key and a note. Tessa picked it up, read it, and went quiet. I touched her shoulder. "Bad?" She handed it to me. "Tessa, we left. I don't understand your choices, but I heard you. Call when you're ready." Mom below it, in different handwriting, Peter had added, "Caleb seems steady. Don't let that be the only reason." I looked at Tessa. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "That's practically a sonnet from my father. Should I be flattered?" Deeply. She took the note back and folded it carefully. Not forgiveness, not a miracle, but maybe a door left unlocked. Then she looked at the hallway, at my room, at hers. So she said, cheeks pink, "Where are you sleeping tonight?" I stepped closer. "That depends. On whether my girlfriend has rules." Her smile turned slow. "Girlfriend? If she wants the job. I hear it comes with corner brownies and emotional support during font emergencies." Tempting. She slid her arms around my neck. "I accept." I kissed her in the kitchen, between the sink full of breakfast dishes and the counter where her mother's note still sat. Not fake, not borrowed, ours. 6 months later, the apartment looked mostly the same, except my room had become a shared office, and Tessa's laundry chair had finally collapsed under the weight of its responsibilities. We bought a bigger bed. We also bought 2 nightstands, because Tessa said real relationships require equal access to water glasses and phone chargers. I proposed a more romantic definition, but she accused me of dodging furniture assembly. Her parents came over for dinner once a month now. Linda still said things that made Tessa grip my knee under the table, but sometimes she stopped herself. Sometimes she apologized. Peter helped me fix a cabinet hinge and told Tessa her new branding campaign looked professional, which made her cry later in the bathroom for reasons that were both sad and hopeful. Brandon sent one message. Tessa deleted it without reading it and then kissed me so thoroughly I burned the grilled cheese. By the following spring, I came home from another work trip exhausted and dragging the same suitcase down the same hallway. This time the apartment door was closed, but a yellow sticky note waited at eye level. "Don't panic, I'm inside. You might not be sleeping tonight." My heart kicked. I opened the door. The living room was full of candles, properly spaced, because I had taught her fire safety, and she had ignored most of it. There were takeout tacos on the coffee table, Motown playing low, and Tessa standing in the middle of the room wearing my gray Northwestern hoodie. Her hoodie by then, she held up a key. "Not to our apartment, I already had that, a new one. I found us a place," she said, nervous and glowing. "2 bedrooms, bigger kitchen, terrible overhead lighting you can complain about professionally." I set down my suitcase. "You found us a place? If you want." Her voice softened. "I don't want to be your roommate anymore." I walked to her slowly. "No?" She shook her head. "I want to be your home." I took the key from her hand, then pulled her into my arms. Outside, the hallway light still cut under the door, just like it had that first night. But this time there was no fear waiting in the crack. Only Tessa's laugh against my mouth, her hands on my face, and the beautiful certainty that I had come home exactly where I belonged. What would you have done if you came home from a work trip, and your roommate whispered, "You won't be sleeping tonight"? Have you ever experienced something similar where a fake relationship or awkward situation turned into real feelings? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.